What's up, guys? My name's Brandon and welcome back to Apple Weekly. This whole bringing you guys the latest on iOS and Apple news has turned into a weekly series that I know you guys all look forward to. So we're going to keep it rolling and bring you the latest every single weekend. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on next weekend's episode. But anyways, in this episode, we're going to talk about iOS 15.4 and some features that just went live, the battery drain issue, why we didn't get iOS 15.5 Beta 1 yet, a new MacBook that's coming that we didn't expect to see, how an Apple employee stole $10 million from the company, and more. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with some of those iOS 15.4 features. And the first one is that the digital driver's license officially launched in just one state. So if you're in Arizona, you're lucky because you now have the digital ID feature. That is the only state in America right now that has access to this feature. So you can see here, here's what Apple said in their press release. Arizonans can now add their driver's license or state ID to wallet and tap their iPhone or Apple Watch to seamlessly and securely present it at select TSA security checkpoints in Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. So not only is it limited to just Arizona, but it's only limited to one airport in Arizona right now. So it's a very, very limited amount of users who can use this, but it's still cool that we're seeing this roll out. Apple did also mention the next batch of states includes Colorado, Hawaii, Mississippi, Ohio, and the territory of Puerto Rico. And if you're on iOS 15.4 now, you can actually see this feature if you go into your wallet application. So if you go into wallet and then go to the plus sign up in the top right, you will see at the bottom now, we have driver's license or state ID. So that is a new option down there. And when you tap on that, you can see it says Arizona driver's license. Securely present your identity with your iPhone or Apple Watch. So of course it says specifically Arizona right now, but as it starts rolling out to other states, you will see your state right here. And you can see it shows a cool little graphic up there for your state and the ID, which is really neat. And after you tap on continue here, this is where you scan the front and back of your ID. Then it's stored inside of your wallet to use at TSA and hopefully in the future, other places. And of course, once other states start adopting this feature and allowing it in their states, I will let you guys know in a future episode when we actually have access to this. And of course, if I get access here in Florida, I will show you guys a demo of adding my license to the wallet app. Now, another feature that you guys might have forgot about because it's been 2 years since it was announced is CarKey. So this is a feature that was originally just exclusive to BMWs. This would allow you to just basically have your phone and use it as the key to get in your car, hence the name CarKey, just like you do with a Tesla. So basically you walk up to it and unlocks. Once you walk away, it locks the car for you. So that's a cool feature, but it was exclusive just to BMWs until just recently where it expanded to other makes and models. So Apple just expanded this feature to the 2022 Genesis GV60 and G90, along with the 2022 Kia Niro. And you can see the list of CarKey compatible cars here on Apple's website where it shows all the CarPlay enabled vehicles, and there's a little key next to the ones that are able to take advantage of this new CarKey feature. Actually not new, but newly starting to roll out to other vehicles finally after years. Apple also just recently revamped the 3D maps in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. So if you live in one of these cities, you will notice that you have the 3D buildings right here. Of course, you have to tap on 3D to see it, and you can see it just looks really good, especially when you go to like the stadiums and big buildings. You can see they just look awesome here in the default Maps application. So they have been revamped here for those select cities in Canada. And if you're somebody who hates iOS 15.4, unfortunately you cannot downgrade to 15.3.1. And that's because Apple just recently stopped signing the firmware. So you are stuck now on iOS 15.4. So we are waiting for a new version to come out. If you're having any type of bugs or battery drain or anything like that, unfortunately you cannot downgrade, but we are going to see some new releases here in the coming weeks, which we'll talk about at the end of this video. But just to let you know, if you tried downgrading and you couldn't, that's because Apple stopped signing 15.3.1. Now, as far as bugs go, there have been several bugs with the latest version of macOS 12.3, which makes me think a new bug fix update is coming for all Apple software, including iOS and iPadOS. So I know this is mainly about iOS, this video, but I still want to talk about these macOS bugs because previously we heard that macOS 12.3 was bricking Macs that had the logic board replaced, but now we have 2 more bugs that are actually pretty major, that are pretty widespread as well. So number 1 is external monitor issues after updating. So some people cannot see anything on their external monitor and it just says no signal. So a lot of people are having this issue. It seems pretty widespread on the forums and on Twitter. Also, people are having issues with game controllers. So like if you have an Xbox, a PlayStation, or any other third-party controller, they're just simply not working over Bluetooth. You have to have them plugged in for them to work, which is weird. But because of all those bugs, that's why I mentioned earlier that we're probably going to see a 15.4.1 very, very soon. And we'll talk more about that near the end of this video, but I think that's coming much sooner than later. And I know I mentioned this before, but iOS 15.4 also has tons of security patches in it, tons of important security patches, not just minor ones like related to FaceTime or messages or anything like that. A lot of WebKit and a lot of kernel bugs as well. So you can see here, people on Twitter are saying that 15.4 fixed a kernel vulnerability that was introduced in the betas of iOS 15.0. So it seems like a lot of the vulnerabilities that were patched in this update have been there for a while. They didn't just pop up. So a lot of big fixes. So if you're into like jailbreaking and things like that, that is just one thing to keep in mind. And also it is a good reason to upgrade if you have not done so already. Yes, some people are saying bad battery life, but I'd rather be safe than sorry with security patches like that. And of course, battery drain issues are always going to be solved with future updates. It is annoying in the moment, but that is something that usually tends to get fixed over time. And speaking of battery life, that seems to be getting a ton of complaints lately on Twitter, on social media, in my comments, everywhere. A lot of people seem to have issues with battery drain on 15.4. And to my surprise, I saw that Apple actually acknowledged a tweet about bad battery life in 15.4, and it was interesting. I mean, just look at this. They say that basically you have to wait sometimes up to 2 days for your battery life to get better and not drain, which is not true. I mean, it will never take 2 days. It only takes usually a couple hours after you update for all your files to reindex and things like that. So I'm not sure why somebody sent off that tweet from Apple, but I don't think that's true. I really don't. So interesting that they responded that way, but I will say that if you want to basically try to get better battery life and try to get down to the bottom of why your battery is draining in 15.4, my number one thing I can think of, especially if you're on the iPad that could be causing battery drain, is universal control. So if you're using universal control on your iPad, try turning that off and seeing if your battery drain goes away. That is a new feature that is in beta, so it's not going to be a surprise if that is causing some battery drain on your iPad or even your MacBook if you're using it with a MacBook. So I would try that. And if you're on an iPhone, specifically an iPhone 13 Pro or 13 Pro Max, I would try turning off the 120 hertz animations. So if you go into your settings here and go to accessibility and then to motion and then down here to limit frame rate, I would try turning that on. That sets the maximum frame rate to 60 frames per second. That could be, fixing some issues that you may have had with 120 hertz animations in third-party applications, because it is new. Starting with 15.4, it allowed third-party applications to take advantage of those 120 hertz refresh rates. But if you don't fall into one of those categories, I really don't know what to tell you. It seems like a pretty widespread battery drain issue. So I would just say to hold on and wait for a fix. Like I said, we should be seeing one pretty soon. But in the meantime, make sure to check out my battery saving tips video. That's linked down in the description below and also in the card up above. That should help you out, at least get some battery life back and not drain as bad as you probably are right now on 15.4. But as far as performance goes, I've really seen no complaints about performance on this update, which is a good sign. There aren't very many bugs, and now that we get those 120 hertz animations in third-party applications, it also makes this update feel extra smooth and extra fast over 15.3.1. So really no complaints with performance. Seems like all the complaints are just with battery life. All right, so now what is next for Apple? So first off, why did we not get an iOS 15.5 beta yet? Because going this long without a beta is unheard of, and it rarely ever happens. So I think that it's likely because 15.5 is not expected until around WWDC time, at least according to Mark Gurman. So we shouldn't have expected in the first place a beta to come until the end of March or early April. And this might just simply be due to the fact that 15.4 introduced so many new features that Apple is just monitoring and kind of working on a fix for all of those issues that arose after 15.4 and macOS Monterey 12.3 came out. So I think next week, or at the very latest the following week, is when we'll see a new beta release. Next week is when we should see the WWDC invites go out, and last year we did get a new beta the day after those invites went out, so we'll have to see if history repeats itself, but I would expect those sometime between early and mid next week, which also happens to be my birthday. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, I would also expect a 15.4.1 as soon as this coming week. So I think a bug fix update is coming very, very soon, as there are several bugs for Apple to patch up on both iOS, iPadOS, and especially on macOS. So for all we know, we might be seeing a 15.4.1 before we see a first beta of 15.5 if we are going to get a release in June. All right, so now let's move on to the Apple News segment of this video. So first up, a lot of you guys have asked me over the past few months when the new redesigned MacBook Air is coming. So let's discuss that first. According to Ross Young and the DSCC report, Apple is planning a new variant of the MacBook Air for 2023 that's going to feature a screen size around 15 inches. They're also planning to increase the display of the current 13.3-inch MacBook Air to something that is, quote, slightly larger, but still between 13 and 14 inches. But here's the kicker. It might not actually be called the MacBook Air. So Ming-Chi Kuo tweeted this out. Predictions for Apple's potential 15-inch notebook in 2023. Number 1, mass production in Q4 2023 if all goes to plan. Number 2, although a larger display generally consumes more power, the design goal is to use the same 30-watt power adapter as MacBook Air. And number 3, here's the kicker, it might not be called MacBook Air. So this is super interesting, and I think that this could be the laptop that's going to eventually replace the base model 13-inch MacBook Pro, and Apple might just end up calling this the MacBook. I think that would make a lot of sense. I've seen some people say MacBook Studio, but I think MacBook makes a lot more sense for an entry-level MacBook, just like they do for the iPad. So that's the plan for next year, but according to Mark Gurman, a redesigned MacBook Air is also coming later this year. So at first he said it was coming in the first half of the year, but now he says it's coming in the second half of 2022, so maybe around September time. So he does also mention to not expect an upgrade to the high-end 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros this year, and that the M2 Pro and M2 Max chips are being saved for next year in 2023. But we can still expect the 13-inch M2 MacBook Pro this year, and that's the one I think should be replaced by the MacBook Air, just MacBook, next year. Now moving on to the iPhone 14, it might be getting even thicker this year. So if you were disappointed with the iPhone 13's thickness, prepare for more thickness to be added. At least that's what Max Weinbach says. So he tweeted out schematics for the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max, and if you look closely, he actually includes the measurements here. You'll see that it shows a thicker body and a larger camera bump compared to the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max. The thickness of the 14 Pro Max is going to measure at 7.85 millimeters compared to 7.65 on the 13 Pro Max, and the camera bump might measure at 4.17 millimeters thick compared to 3.6 millimeters thick on the 13 Pro Max. But for the regular 14 Pro, looks like the thickness is going to increase a little bit, but it's not going to be as noticeable as the Pro Max, but the camera bump is going to be a noticeable change. So it looks like all those rumors saying that the camera bump is going to be non-existent and that we're going to have a flush back with the 14, looks like those are false. But we'll have to continue monitoring this, and I'll let you guys know when we have any more iPhone 14 leaks or rumors. And speaking of the iPhone 14, Apple could be launching a new subscription service as early as the end of this year for hardware. So the same way you subscribe to iCloud or Apple Music, you're soon going to be able to subscribe to get the latest iPhone every year. And this comes courtesy of Mark Gurman, who said this, quote, "The idea is to make the process of buying an iPhone or iPad on par with paying for iCloud storage or an Apple Music subscription each month. Apple is planning to let customers subscribe to hardware with the same Apple ID and App Store account they use to buy apps and subscribe to services today. The program would differ from an installment program in that the monthly charge would not be the price of the device split across 12 or 14 months. Rather, it would be a yet-to-be-determined monthly fee that depends on which device the user chooses." So basically, you're leasing an iPhone and you have no option to buy it at the end of your lease. That's basically what I get from it. So maybe it's going to be $50 a month, maybe it's going to be $20 a month, whatever the case may be, you're going to be able to get the latest and greatest iPhone every single year. So you're going to basically trade in, like this is the 13 Pro Max. If I pay, $30 a month, I'll be able to get the 14 Pro Max next year and trade it in, but I don't actually get to keep the phone that I have. It's just like a lease on a car with no buyback option. So this could be huge for Apple, and it's also a very intriguing option for customers who want the latest and greatest iPhone each year, but can't necessarily afford to do that every year. Obviously you shouldn't do that because you shouldn't live beyond your means, but there are a lot of people out there who just want the latest and greatest iPhone, even though they can't afford the rent. That's just how it is. But anyways, I'm curious, how much would you guys spend per month to get access to the latest iPhone every year? Please let me know in a comment down below. I'm very curious how much you you would spend a month. And then the final story today is a pretty bizarre one, and it's about an Apple employee who defrauded the company of over $10 million. So this employee, who worked as a buyer for Apple for 10 years, was in charge of negotiating with vendors and placing orders for Apple to pay, but he did a little bit more than just that. He also took some kickbacks from the payments, he stole parts by using false repair orders, and also charged Apple for items and services that they never received. Prosecutors said that this employee also evaded taxes on and laundered the proceeds from the schemes. Reports also say that this man was just trying to save up enough money for a Mac Studio and the Pro Display XDR, but I cannot confirm or deny that report. So there you have it. That is the latest batch of Apple news from this past week, along with some additional info on iOS 15.4 and what to expect next. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up, and also make sure to subscribe so you don't miss next weekend's episode. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.